Welcome into Sidelined Sports, an NCTV interview series. I'm your host, Jaron May. And if you've watched this interview series, you know what we do here. We talk about how COVID-19 has impacted high school and youth sports in your local area. Today, I don't have just one special guest. I have two special guests, Jake Silveria and Paige Berdos, who are both going into their senior year at King Philip High School and are both trying to play sports in college. So I talk with them about how this pandemic has impacted their recruiting efforts to be able to play at the next level. Without further ado, let's check out the interview. All right, welcome into Sidelined Sports, and now I have a very special guest, Jake Silveria, a high schooler at King Philip and a star baseball player. Jake, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jake, let's talk about your experience with COVID-19. And obviously, it's not positive because no one's experience really has. But tell me what you've been doing in your downtime since high school got shut down and moved to home, and because, well, you didn't have a high school baseball season.
So it was actually pretty interesting. We were supposed to have tryouts the week after everything shut down. So I was pretty much in the full swing of getting ready for my high school season. Once everything got shut down, at first it was kind of almost like, it was more wait and see rather than like spring into action. So at first it was just like, stay ready, like keep your body ready, like stay throwing, keep your arm loose, stuff like that. But then it transitioned into preparing for the summer. So once the high school season was shut down, once I knew that we weren't gonna have a season, I started lifting and going really hard in the weight room and trying to just get my velocity up, trying to be able to like capitalize on my situation. And I actually ended up gaining some fastball velo, which was good.
Awesome. Well, it seems like you have a positive attitude about it. What were you throwing before and what are you throwing now? So
at the end of basketball season, I play basketball too. I was like 193, which is really, really small for me. Then over quarantine, I added like 15 pounds, a little bit of muscle, a little bit of fat. But I ended up going from a 77-mile-an-hour fastball velo to an 82-mile-an-hour fastball velo.
That's respectable right there. And I mean, who hasn't added some fat during this quarantine? All right, so Jake Silveria joining us here on Sidelined Sports and NCTV interview series. So that's what you did during quarantine. Let's talk about your actual recruiting, though. So first off, let's give a little lay of the land. What schools are you looking at and what schools are looking at you?
So I began, to start the recruiting, I started this fall really. And a lot of the Division I schools, like I was talking like UMass, URI, Bryant, they're filling up quick now. So basically what happened was once schools were allowed to have kids back and once schools were allowed to get transfers, a lot of transfer kids came in and a lot of the kids who committed early just committed so they could basically ensure their spot for the next 4 years. So what happened is I know for a fact that URI and Brian are both full already, which it just is what it is. Like that's just kind of the experience. And what honestly this whole recruiting process has made me look at is like the smaller D3 schools, like the higher academics, like the NESCACs, like a school like Wheaton, like Tufts, and just kind of put everything into perspective for me and how I realized I can play a very high brand of baseball if I'm not even at the D1 level, which is
awesome.
Good.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So you're looking at those schools. You're going into your senior year, and obviously this past year was your junior year. That's a big recruiting year and a big year for you to be able to get your name out there for college coaches. So how has COVID-19 impacted the actual recruiting? Like, have you been able to talk with coaches? How is it different in your situation compared to, say, someone a year before or a year after once we get past all of this?
So one thing that's really tough is that the Division I programs are on what's called a dead period right now, right. Meaning that they can't contact or come out to see kids right now. So in a normal summer, like if this was last year and I was a senior, Division I programs would be at all the summer tournaments, all the summer games, but they're just not allowed to come at all. And I think part of that is to even the playing field for some areas of the country where kids may not be able to be playing baseball right now.
Mm-hmm.
So basically right now it's like a D3 feeding frenzy because all the coaches are out trying to get guys that they might not have been able to get before, guys that were going to do something, but now that COVID happened, they're going to either take a gap year or prep year to go somewhere else. So I've been talking to a lot of D3 schools, and I've seen a lot more D3 schools than I saw last year. But on the other hand, the D1s are just nowhere to be seen until September.
So your King Philip season got shut down, but have you been able to play any type of summer ball, any types of camps just to get your name out there?
Yeah, so I actually played for the GBG Hawks, the Garcia Park baseball group out of Foxborough. And the guys over there are really good. We had plenty of workouts to do over quarantine. They gave us a throwing schedule, hitting workouts. They gave us these blast motion trackers that you put on the bottom of your bat. They track your swing so they could keep us up to date on and like keep us developing. And they've been doing their best. We've been playing every weekend. We've had plenty of games, and I just can't thank those guys enough for doing what they can to get us out there and getting us seen.
Jake Silveria joining us here on Sidelined Sports. Jake, before I let you go, I have one last question, and I talked with the King Philip High School baseball coach, Jeff Plimpton, a little earlier on this interview series about everything that he's had to go through, especially in his first year at the helm of your program. And he gave a little rumor, maybe it's just a rumor, that the baseball season might get shifted to the fall this upcoming year because it's less contact, and they could do that opposed to, say, football, where you are trading all of those body juices, as I like to say. So with baseball, theoretically, in the fall, what are your opinions on that?
I'm a big fall baseball guy. I play fall baseball anyway for GBG. Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of just one of those situations where I'm just going to adapt to anything that gets thrown at me. And if I have a fall baseball season for high school, I mean, I'll be happy about it. If I have a season in the spring, I'll be happy about it. So
okay. One little follow-up. If that does happen and it switches over to the fall, does that help you with recruiting?
It could potentially. I mean, I'd already be playing for GBG, so it's just kind of two different types of recruiting. So basically, a prediction of mine is the D1 schools that have spots left will be going crazy during early September and October. So I'll be playing GBG through that time anyway. But if I had a high school season on top of that, that might help even more.
Awesome. Well, that's Jake Silveria joining us here on Sidelined Sports. Jake, thanks so much for talking with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, we have another special guest here on this episode of Sideline Sports. This time it's Paige Burdos, a softball player going into her senior year at King Philip High School. Paige, thanks so much for speaking with me.
Thanks for having me.
So, Paige, first off, before we get into the whole softball talk and the recruiting and how COVID-19 has impacted all of that, why don't you just tell me a little bit about what you've been doing during quarantine just to try to stay in softball shape?
Well, definitely trying to keep busy and just get out of the house whenever I can. Just a lot of home workouts since I haven't been to the gym at all since it hasn't been open. So a lot of running, home workouts outside or inside. Softball started up a little earlier last month, so I was able to go to tournaments and travel a little bit with that. So it definitely got a lot more enjoyable once that started.
Awesome. What softball do you play?
Club softball for KP Pride, which is out of Plainville, and then it's just the 3 KP towns.
Awesome. That's awesome. So going off of that on the softball route, so obviously COVID-19 impacted King Philip softball. It shut down high school softball for you. Going into that season, what were you looking most forward to, especially since it was your junior year? That's an important year for you for recruiting. What were you trying to do during your junior year?
Well, definitely missing out with all the seniors. This year was going to be a great year with how many seniors we had. We were all a pretty close team, so it's going to be a lot of fun to play with all of them. So they definitely lost their season, and we lost the chance to play with them for one more year. The incoming freshmen were going to be great. So we were going to have a really strong team. We were hoping definitely with a new coach this year. But definitely just not having to be able to have coaches come to games in the spring and be able to enjoy the fact that we were going to have a new coach this year, and that I couldn't really showcase anything this spring just with it all being taken away.
Right. It seems like everyone has that one moment that they realized, wow, like everything's about to shut down. And specifically for this context, it's, wow, like my season, softball is going to get completely shut down because of this virus. What was that moment for you? When did you find out? What were you thinking in that moment? Just kind of walk me through that one time that you found out.
Well, our last captain's practice was on the Thursday, right before the Friday that school got canceled. Okay. And everyone was talking about how tryouts were supposed to be the following Monday. And people were just bringing up, do you think we'll have tryouts? So it was after that we all kind of realized, and it hit us like we're not going to have a season. Just when they came out with a notice, like we won't be able to have tryouts, we're not going to be able to have sports. It was probably after they kept coming out with sports aren't going to start until like May 6th now. Mm-hmm. And then when it got shut down for good, that was probably the time that it really hit me that I don't get to have my junior season.
Wow. So I didn't even know that you guys didn't even get to tryouts. I thought you at least had tryouts and were practicing or something like that. Wow. So that is a really big bummer. So let's talk about recruiting wise. What schools are you looking at / what schools are looking at you?
So I want to play Division III.
Okay.
So I've been going back and forth with the coach from Endicott in Mass. And we've had some pretty good conversations. She's been to a few of my games. She seems to be really interested, and that's my number one right now. So I'm pretty sure about me wanting to go there. I'm looking at URI, but I wouldn't play softball there if I went there just because of its Division I. But really strong set on Endicott right now, and she seems to be really interested. So I seem to be in a really good position.
Well, that's awesome that you know where you want to go already. For softball specifically, is junior year a really big year, or is it kind of whenever college coaches start looking at you?
I'd say junior year is probably the most important year, especially summer after junior year, which half of that definitely got taken away. And with coaches not being able to travel outside of their state to go watch tournaments, it definitely made it a lot more complicated. But yeah, I'd say junior year and the summer after.
It's interesting. I also did not know that they couldn't travel out of the state. At least Endicott is in Massachusetts, so that helps you out. Before I let you go, Paige, one last question, and looking forward, when do you think, I mean, I know obviously it's all up in the air, but when do you think that you can actually make a decision on college after all of this blows over?
Well, I'm hoping to apply early decision at Endicott.
Okay.
So I'm hoping by November I will have, I'll be knowing where I'm going.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. Best of luck to you, of course. And thank you so much for joining me here on this episode of Sidelined Sports.
Thank you.
Again, a special thank you to Jake Silveria and Paige Bertos for both joining me here on this episode of Sidelined Sports, an NCTV interview series. And of course, a special thank you to you, the viewers, for tuning in and watching. Make sure you come back next week because we have a lot more content for you. But for now, Jaron May signing off for NCTV.